Welcome to Beyond the Wild podcast, where we go venturing beyond the gear, beyond the subject, beyond the shot, to find the heart of wildlife and adventure creative. Beyond the Wild podcast is brought to you by Pictureline.com, your online source for everything photography, and Canon USA. Listen in, we share tips and tactics learned from years of journeying into the wild. Your hosts are Jason Loftus, Ron Hayes, and myself, Mark Raycroft. Let's begin another episode of Beyond the Wild.
Welcome to another episode of Beyond the Wild podcast. We are actually, everybody tonight is in Utah. Jason and I are just getting ready to go to the Pictureline's Spring Expo, Spring Photography Expo. We are promised that there's some incredible sales going on. You will not hear this before the expo. Hopefully you will hear the live version of the podcast that we're going to be doing as a part of the expo. But wish you all could be here, and make sure you make plans to be here next year. As Pictureline's been a great sponsor, they've got some incredible speakers this year. We're going to have the pleasure of going to listen to Keith Ledzinski Friday night. Never mind, you won't know because this is going to be well after the fact. But they've got several other speakers as well, but that one to me is I'm looking forward to it. A lot of experience and good storytelling there. So Jason, would you like to introduce our guest tonight?
Yeah, absolutely. We actually have Maddie Clark as a guest. Most people probably wouldn't know her by that name on the social media world. They would probably know her by Embark with Ember, who is her dog, a gorgeous dog. But she's got a very successful account on Instagram, and the reason we wanted to have her on the show, and we actually had her on the previous show, but it never was able to air, but we wanted to get her back on so we could get this information out to the listeners, because we felt like it was a really good opportunity to share maybe how to use social media to make some money. And actually Maddie makes her living with her social media. So it's kind of a fun story, and I think you might find some interesting things come out of it. Like, you don't necessarily need 60,000, 100,000, 1.5 million followers to actually make a living with social media. And some of the tricks of the trade, Maddie's been willing to open up and share those with us, and kind of her approach and how she has found success in doing so. So we're excited to have Maddie on the podcast again, but for the first time for you guys. And we really just, I think, Maddie, maybe you can just tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, how you got into doing the social media stuff a little bit, and then we can just kind of let that naturally flow to where it goes.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so glad to be on here with you guys. So to give everyone kind of like a little bit of my background, I just kind of started a social media account for my dog when I got her back in like 2018. I had already been doing photography since I was like 10 years old. So they kind of went hand in hand already, like social media, posting photos. And now I had this dog to take photos of. So it kind of all just lined up for me. I would say within like the first couple months of having that account, it took off really, really quickly because someone reposted one of my photos on Reddit, and then they like tagged my account, and it kind of just took off from there. And naturally, especially in like the pet world, a lot of brands will start to reach out to you. And this was, I said, like back in 2018, things were a little bit different on social media, but brands were reaching out. And so I kind of got like thrown into this world of immediately brands wanting to just send me stuff and being like, hey, post a photo with like this dog collar, or like with our dog treats, or like anything related to like my account at the time. People were reaching out and just wanting to give me free stuff. And at the beginning, like, that is the most amazing thing ever, is just to be like, giving free stuff because they like you and everything. And honestly, it was a lot of fun. It was great. And it kind of took a turn a little bit when I found out, like, oh, people are getting like paid for this. Like it was definitely kind of an eye opener when you find out that people within like your same world, like for me, it was like in the dog world, we were working with the same people, but they were getting paid. And you're like, what makes me different? Like, why am I not getting paid? And it's kind of like, oh, because I'm not asking to be paid. I'm willing to do it for free. And any company will gladly take that. So it was kind of a little bit of like baptism by fire, learning all of those things. And it did take me a good like 2 years to kind of get that under my belt. But with that being said, it was the most amazing practice for my portfolio, learning and talking with brands and just kind of getting the hang of everything on social media. But then also having those connections and then them coming back and then me knowing how to talk to them and be like, hey, these are now my rates. So I would say I started to do it a lot more professionally, like 2020. So I'm going on about 4 years now, like working with brands and, having repeat clients now, but really having the know-how on what to say when a brand reaches out to me and they're wanting to just do like a gift exchange or like an ambassador program. And now that I can say like, hey, this is what I do for like a living, like this is my portfolio, like this is what I've done in the past, like here are my rates, and feeling like confident about being like, this is where it's at. There are negotiations, but this is like the starting point for me. So that's a little bit of history and background, but I'm open to all questions.
Yeah.
So, Maddie, sorry, just to jump back a little bit to 2020. I mean, jumping back from now, that was a different time for everybody regardless, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because of COVID and the restrictions that people had. And especially when you're talking about working with companies tended to have a little bit stricter policies than you would have on yourself. So how did that play in? Was it an advantage that you kind of did all this stuff solo? Were you able to use that to get going?
Not real. I honestly didn't see that big of a difference, other than brands and companies had things to kind of talk about, and they were still, it was a little bit different, like on the online side of things. Like there wasn't like any hesitation with like 2020 and COVID and everything. Things were kind of the same. I took advantage of like 2020 of really just going and traveling a lot and kind of just building up myself personally, and brands being like, hey, like outdoor brands really wanting to work with me because I was already out doing those things. But does that kind of answer your question, or a little bit more? Okay.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think there's a lot of crossover here, even just for really like it's basically what are you providing, right? It's all about what are you providing to the clients or the people that might want to use your work. And it's no different for a photographer or anybody else is providing a product or a brand or a service or something. And so I think the challenge is, and a lot of us have gone through this. I think there's no question I did. When I first started doing photography, and that it was the idea of somebody liking my stuff enough to say that they wanted to use it and put it in a magazine or get published or something like that. That being a goal of a beginning photographer, I would have been and I never had the chance, honestly, to do it for free, or I probably would have. I'm just being honest, because to have that recognition, if you will, was a big deal back then for me. But you quickly learn that you've got to value whatever you're providing, and you got to value it in a way that's meaningful to you and it's meaningful to your clients in the market, right, in general. And we've talked about this before a little bit. I'm going down a little bit of a rabbit hole here but I think there's a lot of crossover. I think it's important for people that are coming into the space, that are getting into photography, to right from the get-go, don't let that credit, if you will, or getting published, that's great. Those are great goals, and do it, but do it in a way where you're valued. You know what I mean? Don't do it where you're the guy that's willing to just give your stuff away for free. And there's a couple reasons for that, in my opinion. One is people will come to you for your work, and it may not be the best of the best, but they're doing it because they can get it for free. And I don't think anybody would want that, right? I personally, I would not be happy with that. The other thing is that you're kind of upsetting the market in a way, if you will, of what the products are worth, what the images are worth, whatever you're providing is worth to the market. Because if enough people are just giving it away for free, then all of a sudden people that are actually making a living doing that are essentially no longer able to make a living. At some point, that's where it goes eventually, right? So I'm just curious, for me, and I struggled with this a lot, and I still struggle with it. How do I price my work? How do I value my work? From a photography perspective, working with editors and things, it's easy because they have set rates and they just tell you this is what we pay for, a cover shot or a one-page shot or whatever it might be, and it is what it is. And then you just decide, do you want to do it or not? But like for selling prints and stuff, how do you price those? And what's the clientele you're after? Are you trying to get low cost volume, or are you trying to get high cost where you maybe only sell 4 or 5 prints a year, but you're selling them for $10,000 or $15,000 a piece? I mean, I don't know. I mean, that's craziness, right? Don't get me wrong. But there are those extremes, right? I know people that are selling their prints for way more than that even, right? So I don't know, maybe just talk a little bit about, that was a long way to get to this question. Maybe just talk a little bit about how did you come to a conclusion, and talk about the process too, like when you were doing it for free and then you were getting free products and then you started to charge, and then how do you get to a point where you were able to land on, this is what my value is, and how did you end up with your rates, if that makes sense?
I'll kind of start from the beginning. I was talking to my friends who were doing the same thing as me. And when I felt like we were both at the same level of like professionalism, I'd kind of be like, hey, like, what are you charging for this? And like, honestly, just asking my friends. I did end up taking like a online course for social media, like content creators. And that kind of went through pricing as well. But ultimately, it's such a almost like a personal thing for you to be able to judge your own work, but basically tiering it from, are you first starting out? Have you like considering yourself just like very, very like amateur photographer, like you've never have like sold or done any sessions, like a photo shoot or anything, and you're still really, really learning, and you're still shooting like an auto, and you don't go in like Lightroom and you don't edit, that kind of thing, versus like a professional who, people have reached out to them and been like, hey, I like your work. You've got the softwares, you've got the professional camera, like confidently how your camera works and how to provide like a high quality image. Like that would be like another tier. And then like beyond that is honestly for me, it has a lot to do with how have you built up your own brand and your own name, because that's like a huge part of why someone would choose you over someone else. Like they almost like don't even care about the price. It's how have you built yourself up to becoming like your own brand as well. But like I said, I have like this mind that I'm still like, I'm a professional photographer, but I'm still in that first kind of round of like, I had to Google like what size or how do I export this one image to be like on a billboard. Like, like I'm still learning a lot of things, and I don't have like all the experience in every single category when it comes to like clients, but I'd still consider myself like a professional. I have the gear, I've done the courses, I've, shot forever. Like I have the experience under my belt. And so I'm confident with like my own prices with that. And honestly, it's asking the same people in your same world of being like, hey, like, what are you charging? Or like, you can even Google it at this point. I do have like this, I'd say it's a blog. That is how I first based off my rates. And I can send you the link to that, because it's this whole article that one of my friends wrote on how she charges, like you have to charge for your time, like your costs. Like if you're going out and spending gas, like, or any of your time, like that counts for, going into like a photo shoot, if you're, setting up prices for like a photo shoot, and then you have to consider all the equipment that you have bought, like all the courses, all the knowledge and education, you have to consider that as part of your prices as well. And then if you're doing your own prints, or if you're printing for them as well, that's also cost. So not only do you have like your base price of what you think is like the value of your worth, but also the cost has to be included into there as well. So that's kind of like my long-winded answer for that. But it's one of those things that I don't think anyone can just say, hey, if you've shot for 5 years, you should be, charging $500 a shoot or something. It's very much a personal thing, but there is a lot of, blogs online, like a Google search can at least get you in the right direction. And you can kind of put some feelers out there too. Like if you're doing a shoot and you charge like $200 and you feel like that was not worth it for your time, like per hour even, then you can move up. Like I said, for me, it was baptism by fire. There have been many times where I've undercharged, but you kind of just learn as you go. And then you also get that experience under your belt and you feel more confident to charge more.
Well, I was just going to say, I think that's something that is vastly misunderstood. When people want to buy a print, they know what it costs you to print it because they've looked at doing it themselves, or they've looked at doing their own images, and they know that you can get a canvas done for a couple $100. Let's just say 24 by 36 gallery wrap canvas. So when you come at them with a $750 price tag, some people choke on that a little bit, and then when you explain everything that you just explained, at least they understand. They might still choke on the price, but at least they understand where your pricing is coming from. Hey, listen, I've got thousands of hours actually of my time invested in getting these images. I've got hundreds of thousands of miles on my vehicle. I've got trip expenses that each time I go out, I've got to pay for myself to be there. And that's where, you're right. You can get something printed, but you're not going to get the shot that you like, right? That's right in front of you. And so I think that helps people a little bit, but there is a big misunderstanding as to why photographers charge what they charge versus just charging at cost or slightly above cost, because people don't take into account the cost above and beyond what the actual print costs to be done. And so I think that's valuable information for people, and it's no different than a rancher. You've got to know what each of those cows is worth based on the time and feed that you put into them. The grass that you may have had to lease, the feed that you have to buy in the wintertime. You have to know what your break-even point is, and then the price goes up from there.
It's a lot like I can buy. People will come to you for a print, right, Ron? I've heard this directly. Hey, I really like this. I'm just going to make up a cow image that you have, and you tell them the price, and it's well, that size, it's going to be $750, and they're like, holy cow, I can go to Walmart and get the same canvas of a similar cow for $80. It's like, well, and that's where it's like, okay, well, do you want the exact same thing that's hanging in 200,000 homes, or do you want something that's unique and one-off where you're supporting an artist and it's more of a piece of art than it is just a mass-produced something in a box store? So I mean, there's a lot of that comes into play for sure. The other thought I had when you said that stuff, Maddie, was there's also a period where you're kind of building your portfolio, right? And so there's nothing wrong, I don't think, with taking on some work up front for a better rate and working with good brands, good people, good companies, whatever it might be, to build that portfolio and put that relationship in your resume. You know what I mean? So there's some of that for sure too, right? Where you're kind of trying to show that you can perform and you can provide the product that you're trying to sell, and build that resume a little bit too.
Yeah. I was going to touch on that too, of there's the monetary value of working with someone, but then also the relationship value and how much like that relationship value can hold, especially if you're kind of playing this long game of you like want to work with like them more in the future. It's sometimes you do have to upfront be like, hey, like I like this is beneficial to me because I'm getting my foot in the door with this brand or company that I always wanted to work with. And then knowing in your head that you can take the steps to build the relationship and get even bigger projects with them, or just, you know, work with them on a bigger scale and have that connection and have it last even longer. And in like long term, you'll probably end up getting like even more money than you thought versus like the beginning when you could have been a really, you know, expensive person for them to hire and maybe they didn't think it was like worth it. And then the relationship ends right there. Like I've really learned that sometimes you do have to give and take a little bit, especially if you're trying to prove your worth a little bit, because sometimes you get to the point of, you know, how great you are, you know, how, you know, all the back end stuff, but they still don't know that. And they're not going to know that. And they sometimes have 5 or 6 people lined up that they're trying to figure out who to work with. And so they don't have the time to figure out exactly like why you're worth it. So it honestly is, I would say, still like case by case. And that's one thing that I've always tried to make clear with people. It's like, there's no like hard black and white rules when it comes to even your rates. Like I'm all about custom rates now. There's a baseline on how to do it, but honestly, it's all very custom, and you have to just learn how to work with the brand and see what's beneficial for them, beneficial for you, and where you can take it into the future as well. And you can apply that same concept kind of across the board too.
Hey, Maddie, something that you said earlier that I think was important, and we kind of skipped over it a little bit, but it applies to what you were just talking about. You know, as far as building the brand and becoming a value to your customer, and you know, then developing those relationships along the way. Could you tell us a little bit, or tell listeners a little bit about how you went about building yourself as a brand?
Yeah. I think a lot of it comes from personal time of just showing up. In my case, it was, you know, social media on Instagram. And when this is going to sound kind of funny, but when you open yourself up to kind of be more vulnerable and letting people into your life, people kind of get very interested in that. And for me, I would also consider myself very much like a storyteller. And I think what a lot of people have now kind of come to realize when it like from a sales point is stories sell. So if you're able to kind of open yourself up, be genuine and authentic, and kind of show people that online, then you can kind of start to build a brand around that, honestly, where it's like you're showing up consistently. People like what you're saying, what you're doing, what you're into, you know. And when it comes to, let's say, like wildlife photography, people love behind the scenes. People love to know how you got the shot. People like live for that. Like that itself would sell a print, you know. Like if you can tell us like a crazy story on how you got this one shot, like if you just have like a portrait of like a wolf, like that's amazing, that's cool. But if you have a whole story behind that as well, and you're good at captivating an audience, like right there, people are going to hit like yes on wanting to buy your print or any of that kind of stuff. So I really think it comes to being able to get really, really personal with an audience, be vulnerable, tell stories, and people will kind of, you know, start to reach out to you and ask you questions of like, in my case, it's like, where's the best places to hike with your dog? Where do you like to travel, like dog friendly wise? Or, you know, like I get camera questions all the time. And so you kind of just start to build yourself that way. And like I said, I've spent over 5 years now of me like doing this for Medium, and say like I've got a brand, but I would say it's definitely just showing up and being there like for other people, whether it's from like an educational standpoint or from like an entertaining, valuable like standpoint that way, or emotional, I guess.
Very cool. I have a few questions for you. So I think you're in a unique position now, and I think actually the fact we're doing this now later again, there's more details and things that you've probably learned, and I'm speaking specifically the transition between the transition between when photos were kind of it and photos were doing everything you needed to grow your account and do everything, and that transition to reels, right? So talk to us a little bit about that. How did you manage that? Are you keeping up with the algorithms with Instagram and stuff, with the reels now being king?
Yeah. Oh, I've struggled with that. I will admit, when those first rolled out, I said no. Like, there was no way. I am not a video type of gal at all. Like, photos were everything. But I did learn very quickly, and I knew this was going to be the case, where if you don't pivot with Instagram or social media, you will get left behind.
Right.
And like, that's just how it is. And when people were just blowing up left and right from reels and gaining like these big followings, I was still stagnant at 12,000 followers, 13,000 followers. And I had to really be okay with that, because I knew I wasn't going to push reels and push like my views that way. And you just almost have to accept it if you're not going to play the Instagram game. And for me, like, some of it was fun. It was fun when you were getting paid for it. Like, I really hopped on the Reels train right when they said that they would pay me money. So I'll be honest. But now I've kind of just played with Reels, where I'll make something if it makes sense and I know how to, but it wasn't ever my world with video, I'll be honest, to shoot like that. So I've tried to make it more of a fun thing. I've done a few things on like my other page where I'll just, just show videos from like my camera of like, wildlife or whatnot. But it's hard, because I know that's the way to grow on social media right now. And I've just been stubborn, and I've just really have stayed just wanting to be connected with my audience instead of pushing reels and just trying to get my content really, really out there. I know it works, 100% it works. And I've just kind of been like, well, maybe we'll just kind of leave it where it's at. I feel confident and comfortable where all my stuff is at. And if I ever want to grow my account more, at least I know how.
Right. Well, that's a great answer, because I'm in the same boat, right? I mean, when the reels hit, I was growing my account pretty good with the photos and stuff, and I had a pretty good momentum in that, and I was playing the game. I was posting a photo a day roughly, and it was working, and then when the reels became king, I felt like my account just died. And I had to have that same discussion with myself that you're talking about, because it's just, I'm not the guy that's going to be able to create those videos daily and go out and be creative and create some reel with a photo and do what, a lot of guys are doing and gals are doing really well. I just am not that person. And so I had to accept the same thing. And although I see some growth now, it's kind of picked up a little bit. I think photos are still worth something, and they're treating them like they are now again. But it's a lot of, also I post a lot of stories and other things. I don't play the real game, but so I see a little bit of growth is my point. But I guess the where I'm going with that is, how many followers do you have today? And how many followers does the Embark with Ember account have today?
It has almost 16,000. Like, I think I'm like 30 away from 16,000 followers.
16,000 followers. Okay. So, and the reason I bring that up is, like, we kind of alluded to it earlier on, right? But I think a lot of people think you really have to have a large following in order to do something and make money with your social media. And I think there's more to it than that. Maybe you can expand a little bit on what's really important to brands and to companies. And is it the number of the followers? I'm sure that plays a part, but I know it's not the only thing. So what other metrics or what other things are you sharing with them to show what you can bring to the table? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure makes sense, because I sometimes do have to remind myself that it isn't about followers, and it is and it isn't. It depends on how you want to view it that day, to be honest. But for me, it's brands will recognize that I am able to captivate people enough to follow me. So they're like, well, she must be providing something. But my biggest thing and my biggest upper hand is my engagement with my followers, and how many clicks I get per thing that I recommend, or how many people are responding to my stories. And I mean, I have I'll give you a pro tip in a second, but the amount of people I have talking in my DMs like every day just about the things that I'm promoting or just questions that I have, the biggest tip I can give you from that is if you're wanting to provide worth to a brand, start taking screenshots of your responses from people. So if you're just promoting, let's say just some random product that you really like, and you have 5 or 6 people being like, oh my gosh, tell me more about this, or like, where did you get this? Or, I've got like just a whole album in my phone now of just screenshots. And I've sent that to people too. Like, that's how I now kind of judge like my own metrics and being like, hey, people will buy from me. Like, here's my click-through rate on like who's going to your website. But also like I have people, and they probably don't even know how much this helps me, but it really does help a lot, who will like send me a photo of like, I was just influenced by you. I bought this product. And I'm like, that's awesome. I'm like, I don't even ask for people to do that. But I really think the biggest value is honestly in people's direct messages. Who is talking to you being like, oh my gosh, like, thank you for this, or thank you for that, or like, what questions are you getting asked is another really good way to kind of show what you should be like doing on your stories. Because I'm the same way, Jason. I'm always like on my stories doing stuff, and that really has helped me a lot. That's where I talk to people. I love being there. Like, anyone who wants to talk and engage with me, like I love it. Those are like my people. I don't feel like I need 100,000 more like people to talk to. I mean, it would be great and it'd be awesome, but I feel like I'm in a really good spot still. And I am able to go to these brands and be like, this is like, here's the other thing. When you do work with a brand, whether it was free or not, you still have a whole case study you can now present to other brands. If you are looking back being like, this is how many used my code, or this is how many people clicked on like my link or whatever, you should always keep those numbers and put it into some sort of portfolio to show to like the next brand. So there's always going to be value with working with a brand, whether you were underpaid or if it was for free. Like, there's always something you can do to give, like, to use from that one to step up to the next level with the next brand that you want to work with. So really, engagement will always be what I would think is more valuable. I've heard that from brands too, that's what they care about more. The first thing that a brand does see is your followers. So I do think it is important that you do, have that focus, but I have completely let that go. I let that go, honestly, once Reels came out and I knew that I wasn't just going to blow up anymore. Like, I knew that I had to have like a different strategy, and it's just being always like in my DMs, responding to people, giving free value to people, and not coming across as like this, like salesy, I guess, and giving people what they want to see and hear, and just always engaging with them, honestly.
It was really about the engagement then, which is, you're on there all the time. I see stories from you every day, and that leads me into my next question. Sorry, Ron, I feel like I'm commanding this conversation, but I have lots of questions.
No, you're good. Go ahead.
So, because everything you just said, do you kind of have a formula that you're using today? Like, how many times do you post? When do you post? And I know for all of our listeners too, everybody knows the algorithm changes constantly, and you always got to be kind of playing the game. But for you, what's the formula as of now that's kind of working for you?
Yeah, so I've played around with this a lot, mainly because I'm kind of like, what do I have to lose a lot of the time?
Right.
But what I have noticed that really does work for me is if I don't post a story for 24 hours and let something kind of like reset, the next story that I post almost gets triple than if I consistently have stories up and I have like 4 to 5 back to back for like the whole week, views start to go down. So what I've started to do is I don't really post on weekends anymore. And so the first thing Monday morning, I start to get like the highest views. And so that's just kind of what I've played around with. Sometimes I've posted on a random Saturday before, and I don't know what it was about my Saturdays, but again, triple, double, and I have no idea why. And it's funny because I think I let my stories run out this last time. Like I didn't have any stories up for at least 24 hours. And I just posted something about like an email scam that I got, and I got like triple the views on that. And I got some replies. I didn't get like any likes on it though. Like people weren't liking with like their little hearts.
Mm-hmm.
I have no idea why that blew up, because the other thing I would say is if you're getting lots of like hearts, or if you give them a call to action to respond on, then people have, it'll be shown to more people. I haven't really seen that. The only thing I can confidently say is if you let your stories run and you wait a little bit and give it a break and then post, then you'll see something. That's like the only tip I have with that, honestly.
No, that's a great tip. And I mean, we all do that, right? I mean, I'm at a point where I was on a previous podcast with a different podcast, and we talked a little bit about that, right? Like what's the for? And I'm at a point where this is gonna sound bad, but I just am at a point where I really don't care how many followers I have. I would rather have meaningful followers that are engaged, that want to see my stuff, that care about what's going on, that might eventually maybe want to buy a print or something, who knows. But to me, that's worth more, and I think that's what brands are seeing and doing too, right? So don't get me wrong, I'm sure the accounts that have 1.5 million followers, they do great. I'm not doubting that those followers mean something. But like you said, for me, I just accepted that I'm not the real guy. I'm not going to be the real guy, and my account's not going to grow like it was before. Matter of fact, Ron can attest to this. Mark and Ron and I trying to grow the Beyond the Wild podcast Instagram page, because that's meaningful, right? And we're just over 1,000 followers now, which is actually really good in today's world, because we don't do a lot of reels. We are just doing a lot of photos and stories and stuff. So it's growing pretty good, but none of us are the real guy. And so we're having a hard time. Like, maybe we need to hire you, Maddie, and you don't do reels either, but maybe we need to hire you to do some content for us so we can kind of grow the Instagram page. But all joking aside, it's like, what do you do? I mean, if you want to grow, you got to play the game, right? That's the bottom line. So.
Yeah. Well, I think the bottom line is we get Maddie on the podcast again, and we basically get a consultant in interview form.
There you go.
and we're giving our listeners a consultant, basically, if as these things go. But if I will say that your engagement is just from a personal level, and I just met Maddie today. We didn't know each other except for the online presence, and I was down at Pictureline talking to Colin, and Maddie came into town and was at the store, and so we just met face to face today. However, anytime I comment on a post that she's got or a story, I always get something back.
Yep.
And yep. I think that is a testament to, I try to comment on everybody that comments on an image, even if it's just, a thumbs up or knuckles or whatever. Try to give some kind of feedback, because I think that plays into the algorithm as well. But also taking the time to engage with the people that took the time to look at your image or your post. I think that's critical. But I will say that does speak well for you, that when somebody engages, they know it's not just going out there to a bot. You're actually there, and you're giving personal feedback or personal response, depending on what it is, and that is important, not just to the algorithm, but it's important to people.
Yeah, I definitely want to touch on that with the algorithm. I think it's how it's kind of set up, and it honestly always changes, but I think it really is set up saying engage with people, whether it's you putting out some sort of, with your reels, what are you doing to make someone else engage? That's their whole thing. So they're I've even heard a few people talk about they've had conversations with Instagram, and they're like, how do I grow? How do I do this? And no matter what the answer is that Instagram is giving, it's always fizzled down to engaging with people. Whatever you need to do that is how you're going to grow. And I'm all about growing organically too. That's my best thing. That's how I've made some of my best connections, because like you're kind of saying, Jason, like it doesn't do me any good if I all of a sudden get 1,000 followers. They don't like me anymore. They just are following me, and my stuff could get drowned out. Like all those things where, other than if someone follows me and they're commenting on my stuff, or if I'm now engaging with them, they're all of a sudden being like, oh my gosh, I want to ask her questions, or like I want to get to know her more, and I'm on there responding. Like that's where it's at.
Right. Yeah, it makes me think of a scenario maybe like, I think if you had an account that had 100,000 followers, for example, and whoever the content creator is putting up a video or a reel or whatever, and they're getting a couple thousand likes and 30 or 40 comments or something like that. And you see a lot of that, right? Kind of, if you're just like, when you're looking through, you kind of just look at those things and kind of build that, database in your head. But that account versus an account that has 10,000 followers that's getting 1,000 likes per photo, image, reel, whatever, and they've got 250 comments, right? I think that's probably more appealing to brands and to companies than the other account, because again, it's about how many of those followers are engaging with you, right? And if you look at that as a percentage, that's a much higher percentage of engagement than the 100,000 account, for example. And again, I'm not picking on, don't want to make anybody mad. I'm not even calling out any specific accounts. That's not my goal here. I think it's just really to try to understand the point you're making, right? It's really, what's the purpose of your account? What are you trying to accomplish with your Instagram? If it is just to share stuff and be funny and have likes, great, do it. Do you, right? But if your goal is to make money, then you definitely think you need to be more intentional about what you're doing, is kind of what we're talking about here, right? So.
Yeah. And I don't want anyone to ever think that, oh, I have to hit 20,000 followers or 50,000 followers before I can start doing XYZ, like making money or reaching out to brands. Like that's absolutely not true. Like I wasn't even thinking about that at the time when I first started working with brands. You're just excited to work with people, and then you kind of learn about actually being able to set up your rates and everything. But I would never want anyone to think that, oh, just because I don't have this many followers, I can't do that. Like that's absolutely not the case at all. I always tell everyone, just go for it. Honestly, I'll help people write up emails anytime. Just be like, hey, if you want to work with someone and you've got their contact, or if you've got a relationship with them, I'll help you write the email to be like, hey, I'd love to work with you. But yeah.
So now that you caught the bug a little bit, I'm trying to think of which question to go with next. Before I go there, I want to ask you a couple different questions. So do you ever deal with burnout? Like, do you ever get to a point where you're just frustrated, you're tired of it, you're tired of playing the game, but you're living. So how do you deal with that, and how do you try to keep it fun so you don't have to burn out physically?
Oh yeah. Burnout is a real thing. And I think mine always comes from imposter syndrome. Mine always comes from comparing myself to everyone else on social media, everyone who does kind of the same thing as I do, and they land a deal that I wanted, or like, why didn't that brand reach out to me? Or I don't have enough creative mindset to even make a post or even want to edit. Like I deal with that a lot. And it actually happened to me pretty badly, like 2 weeks ago. And I came to the conclusion that I was just on social media watching everyone else do what I wanted to do. So I completely deleted Instagram for 3 days, and I was like, I'm not getting on. There's no way I'm touching that. And I just got instantly happy. Like the freedom that I felt from being like, I'm not even going to hop on. I don't even know what's going on. Thank goodness that wasn't during like the Northern Lights, because that's how I found out that the Northern Lights were going on. But like it was a little bit before that. And I just didn't want to know what anyone else was doing, because it would just make me so frustrated that I wasn't doing that. Because I deal with the FOMO. I deal with the imposter syndrome. I feel like anyone could do what I am doing. Like I'm nothing special in that way. And so I think that if anyone is dealing with burnout, check yourself where you are with your social media. And that I logging off of Instagram was the best thing like I ever did, honestly. Like, and that's going against everything that like I say, but also at the end of the day, I know that no one knew that I was honestly gone for 3 days. No one's paying that close attention to what I'm doing, And so it was just me who knew that. And I just like, I did everything just for me again. I went on hikes, I took photos, I got out my film camera and just made it fun again. Because that's the other part of all of this. It's like, if there was one thing I would tell anyone who's like, I'm quitting my job, I'm going to be a full-time photographer, I've loved it all my life, it's my favorite hobby, I would tell them, make sure you're going to get a new hobby then. Because if you're taking photography as now your career, you are going to hate it at sometimes and you're not going to like love it the same. So get a new hobby if you're going to take that photography goal and passion and turn it into something new. So for me, it was like, well, photography is what I do, but also to fall in love with it again, I always, I take photos for myself again. I take, I go on hikes and I don't worry about if, it's the perfect lighting, and you just have to really get back to your roots on like what you love to do if no one's watching you.
That's a great answer. Actually, I love it. I've taken a few breaks from social media and tend to take more and more now as well. And I don't post near as often, and I'm not on scrolling as much as I used to. And I think I find that balance is really nice, and for me, it's not being on as much makes me happier for sure. Don't get me wrong. I'm just as bad as everybody else. I can get on there and waste a couple hours scrolling pretty easily, don't get me wrong. But yeah, I try to really limit that. That's a great answer. I love it. So you're just basically saying step away, recenter yourself, and then get back into it, right? With a different mindset.
Yep.
Yeah, I saw some of those. Sorry, that's real quick, Ron. I saw some of those images you took with your film camera. That was pretty cool. It got me thinking, like, dang it, do I need to just buy a film camera? Because it's kind of cool,
I'd say yes.
Yeah.
It brings me so much joy.
Sorry, go ahead, Ron.
Well, I was going to say two things. Number one, I think the break, you don't have to delete it necessarily, but step away. And as you said, nobody's going to know. And that is healthy too, because it kind of gives you that little bit of humility. Jason and I had a conversation today about, just people that have a lot of interaction and maybe start to think of themselves a little bit more highly than they ought. And I think I guess I would call it the influencer mindset sometimes. There's certain people, and not many of them in the wildlife realm, but you see, especially young people, and it's just this, everybody loves me so I can do whatever I want. I'll just give out a specific example, Patrick Mahomes' brother. Because my brother is Patrick Mahomes, I can do whatever I want, literally, and doing things that are completely illegal and then expecting to get away with them. Right. I think that's the mindset to a degree, and that's an extreme example. But I think stepping away also lends that little bit of humility, because just as you said, nobody knows that you're gone. Nobody's gonna miss you for those few days or a week or 2 weeks, even a month. And that's good for us to know. And then you're back doing it for the enjoyment, doing it for yourself. Because I think I kind of know where Jason's going to head here in just a second. But before you do that, as a business, or doing this as a business, Maddie, obviously you don't have one stream of income. You've got multiple streams, and I'm sure those streams continue to evolve as things go on. So what are you kind of doing now as those multiple streams of income, aside from just the sponsorships and the agreements that you have with different companies?
Yeah. Honestly, a lot of it has been not necessarily consulting, because I don't want to put myself out there being like, hey, I'm a consultant now. But
you are now. Jason and I are. Yeah, this is a consulting meeting. Yeah.
Right. But it is something I found myself really passionate about, is teaching others kind of the same things that I have learned within like this certain realm. So if like someone is a content creator and they want to, kind of like level up, I can confidently say like, I know how you can get there kind of thing. Or I can do like a page audit and look at their Instagram and be like, this is what I would change. This is how I'd make myself look more like a professional business, or that I'm taking Instagram seriously now. And because I kind of know what brands are looking for because of how they like treat me and how they've come to find me. I kind of know it works in that way. So I love doing consulting, auditing. I've helped people write like pitches or like helping people negotiate with brands. So I do like working on that side. That kind of flows into the other part that kind of led me into being hired out by other people who are now, let's see, how do I put this? They have like influencers under them as like clients. And it's my job to help as like a online business manager, making sure that they have their newsletters written, or that they have their pitches written that they want to get sent out this week, or that they have like all of their content repurposed on multiple different like social platforms. Like I've been hired out by girls who have established that type of business to then take those clients and then help them kind of work along because they want to grow their accounts more. So that's kind of a big thing that I'm doing now, because I've made those connections online, and I've kind of just been like, hey, like I love project management, and I love, setting up different things for content creators to like follow, or, like if they want to learn how to get bigger on social media, like I can give them like a roadmap on like what to do and, kind of make like a custom plan for them. Like I love that kind of stuff. So that's kind of what I've been doing right now. And obviously like I don't post that much on like social media about it, honestly. Like that's kind of what I'm doing more on the side, but I've met everyone through like my social media because I get those questions asked all the time. I'm like, well, I might as well do something with this because I love talking about it, and I've seen awesome results from people who I've helped like land awesome jobs, or get good like retainer clients, or do anything that they want. It's been really cool and fulfilling to see.
That's really cool. Have you even dipped your toe a little? Maybe you're just doing this for fun, and I just wanted to ask the question, but I think you've dipped your toe a little bit into some tours and that too. Or is that just more for, hey, let's get together, who wants to go on a trip?
A little bit. So yes, that would be my dream. So there's a whole story behind a lot of that, because I was approached by a third-party company who was like, hey, we take influencers, and if you can get X amount of people, we'll take like you all on a trip, and you can earn money from that because whatever they pay, you get a percentage of that. I would love to do that. And that was a great way to kind of step into that world. And maybe down the road, I'll do like kind of like workshop or retreats. I wouldn't consider myself like a tour guide in any way. I completely have a bunch of knowledge on certain things, but like I have never really been, I feel like tour guiding specifically is a whole other monster that I've never even touched in that way. But I love retreats. I've done meetups. I've done all of those things where I have used my social media platforms to meet really awesome people who either want to learn from me or just like hang out. We can get together kind of thing. If that goes somewhere more, I would absolutely love that. But yeah, it's more of like a workshop retreat kind of thing versus like a tour guide.
Cool. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. I think you could even do some of your use a retreat to have a training session or whatever on how to be, how to model your page differently or whatever, right? Like you were talking, but
yeah.
So a couple other questions that I have. One is, we haven't even talked about Ember at all. And she's kind of the star of the show a little bit, right? Not that you're not. Don't get me wrong, Matt. You're kind of the puppeteer back there pulling the strings, but gorgeous dog. Tell us a little bit about her. How did you get her, and how did that all kind of start?
Oh my gosh. Well, I knew I wanted a dog just as soon as I had a place for a dog, honestly. I kind of knew that I wanted an Australian Shepherd. I had my heart set on like a lab because I had a lab growing up. But she kind of just, I remember looking on KSL and just kind of seeing like puppies for sale kind of thing, because that's how you did it back in 2018. And you don't really like know anything about backyard breeders or anything. But I remember seeing this ad for these puppies up in Idaho, and in a heartbeat, I was just, I fell in love with the photo that they had posted, and I still have all the screenshots from like the first conversations that I had with her breeder. It was just like, hey, like, is this girl still available? And she's like, yeah, but we have someone coming to look at her tonight, and she's up in Malta, Idaho, and that's almost a 3-hour drive, I believe, from here. And so I hopped in the car and got her that night, because I just knew, like, from looking at that photo that I like needed her. It was absolutely nuts on how that kind of all fell together. And so that's how, like, I found Ember. And then, I mean, she's almost 6 now, which is well, oh my gosh, no, she just turned 6 in March. It's just like mind blowing to me, because she still is a puppy in my eyes. And, you bond with them, and she's the best thing that's ever happened to me. But yeah, she's a 6-year-old Australian Shepherd. She's incredibly smart. I always wanted a dog that would be able to hike with me and just adventure with me, and it's exactly what I got. So yeah.
She's your adventure buddy for sure, right? I mean, yeah.
Yeah, she goes everywhere with me. She's been up in the Tetons more than most people.
Yeah, no joke. And so then I want to talk a little bit about, like, what brand are you shooting? What camera brand are you shooting?
Nikon, forever.
Oh, man.
You won't ever take me away from Nikon.
What? Come on, we have to have a chat. I'm just kidding.
Okay, but
yes.
After the lunch conversation, we're sitting with the manager, the lead salesperson from Pictureline.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And guess where Maddie's buying her gear? Not from Pictureline.
What?
That's not true.
What?
That's absolutely
there were 2 or 3 things that came up, and it was like, oh shoot, I'm sorry, Colin, I didn't know you sold that.
No, I will forever buy everything from Pictureline. I've shopped there since 20 years now. No, I didn't see online that there was a sale going on. I thought it was only an online sale with Pictureline, so I was going to go through that. But I also have a connection with Nikon, and so sometimes I get my stuff directly through Nikon. So that's the only thing. I will never shop anywhere else.
Yeah. That's cool that you got a connection with Nikon too. That definitely helps, right? So
yeah, it's pretty fun.
You're that one person that Nikon will respond to.
Yeah. How did you get him to respond to you? Yeah, that's a great question.
Oh, Jason, do you not know the story about Nikon and me?
No, I don't.
Okay, well, other than I am the most brand loyal human in the world, shot Nikon my whole life because my dad handed me a Nikon. That's how, that's just how it goes, especially with Nikon users. Mm-hmm. But no, so hashtags work, first of all. So I always would hashtag and tag Nikon and all my stuff. Well, last year they... I think it was an email. I can't remember if it was I don't think it was a DM, but they emailed me and said, hey, we love this photo. Can we use it in our upcoming creator promotion? And this was one of those cases where I was like, okay, it's Nikon. It is my top brand that I will live and breathe and die for anytime. Mm-hmm. They want to use my image. And I was thinking in my head, they can just have my photo. That was fine by me. I was like, if you want to use my photo, use my photo. But I remember sending them my image, and along with that, I said literally 4 paragraphs from my love. This is the storytelling that I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. My love for Nikon and where it started, the gear that I've used, and where I'm at now because of Nikon. I gave them the whole spiel, and I said, if you ever have any opportunities for me, let me know, because I'd love to work with you. Got crickets. No one answered me.
Right.
But 2 days later, another gal reached out, and this is a third-party agency that's all reaching out to me, by the way.
Okay.
Reached out and said, hey, we actually have this event coming up and we would love for you to come. So not only did Nikon completely equip me, but they also flew me to Texas and gave me almost a whole week of just a photo shoot, basically. And there was the design team there being like, hey, this is our new, it was with the Z8. And they were like, this, like, give us like all the details. Like, what do you like? What don't you like? Let's, you know, they wanted to really break it down, and they equipped us all for 6 months. There was quite a few of our like content creators out there. And I remember talking to them and telling them, saying, hey, like, I love that you guys recognize content creators and that this is becoming more of a thing, because I think it's really, really valuable, especially in the online world now, that brands are also appreciating people who are using their stuff. And if you've noticed, and I don't know how often you guys look at Nikon's page, but every other week, if not every week, they are now highlighting content creators using their specific hashtags. They have completely, they've reached out and they asked us, I remember they asked us to give them 5 names of people that they could reach out to talk to. And so I've been incredibly impressed with Nikon in that way, where they are now seeing the value of people on social media, obviously, you know, shooting their stuff. And you know, they've reached out to quite a bit of people who shoot on Sony and Canon as well, and been like, hey, try our stuff. And they have completely, you know, come into the world finally of on the social media side and really highlighting their content creators and their photographers too. They just started an ambassador line along with their like content creators. Like they have like a bigger platform for showcasing more people now, and I'm just like, they're blowing it out of the water. So I'll always support Nikon.
Except, okay, so we are sponsored by Canon USA.
Should I not have said any of that?
No, you're fine, because it leads me to this. I was with Nikon for about 2 years. I never got any response when asking about Nikon professional services. I never got any response from Nikon as far as customer service. And in the conversation that we had today, Nikon makes some fantastic products. There's no doubt. And, you know, we talked today at lunch, the Nikon D850 is still my favorite stills camera out of any that I've ever shot, including the one that I'm shooting right now, which is the Canon R5. It's going to be tough to beat. That was a great camera.
Right.
However, they do have some quality control issues, and so I think, you know, those are all things that you can take to, since you have their ear.
Right.
Oh yeah, I've got a straight line to the whole design team. I will 100% put that up.
Well, make sure they know how we feel.
I will 100%. That was news to me today too, by the way. I was like, quality control? What?
Yeah.
So I will. I'll bring it up.
Yeah, Maddie, you know, what's funny is I think if you asked around, like, because I'm another Nikon guy, right? I shot Nikon from the day I started shooting, and I switched to Canon roughly 4 years ago now, and it's just because of the lag in getting that Z9 out, right? And those first Z cameras, let's be real, they just weren't really there and weren't performing. We all agree, we've talked about this before, everybody feels like Nikon's caught up, right? And they do make a great product, and I loved my Nikon gear. But I'm in the same boat. I switched because I could not get their attention. I could not get them to give me the Nikon professional services. I could not get a phone call. I could not get an email responded to. I signed up for Nikon professional services 4 different times and never got a, you know, kick can, nothing. You know, we don't want to, we don't, you know, stop applying, nothing, right? Just nothing. So I mean that, and I think that's a common theme you'll hear if you talk to previous Nikon shooters that switched to either Sony or Canon, and why, right? So I mean, honestly, it's really good feedback for Nikon to hear. You know, I mean, well, it sounds like maybe they're trying to address that. Maybe they've got a new marketing manager or somebody, or a content or a social media manager that's really trying to make that change, and that's really good. But
Yeah.
I will say I love my Canon gear. So,
And I love my Canon professional services.
absolutely, I will tell you. I think anybody out there will have a hard time competing with the Canon professional services. It's bar none. I've never had a single issue, and they are on it. It's fast. They provide you with gear while your gear is getting repaired. I mean, it's a great service. But anyways,
No, that's good. That's good to know. I'll take that information back to Nikon as well.
Take it back. Let us know how that comes out.
Deal.
yeah.
Besides, who are these guys?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they'll be like, and who are these guys? Yeah, okay, whatever. So real quick, my last question for you, and I think this is one we've kind of got off asking, but I think we need to get back on asking because it's a really fun one, is what is your favorite outdoor experience? It doesn't have to be with a camera, it doesn't have to be with photography, it doesn't have to be with your social media, but what is your favorite ever outdoor experience and why?
Oh man,
putting you on the spot. I know.
That's putting me on the spot. I feel like I have a lot, and a lot do have to do with either wildlife or photography.
Mm-hmm.
But honestly, all those experiences kind of started with, like I mentioned, my dad. He always, was taking me outside. We were always camping, and I mean, I'll hold on to those like memories of just watching him fly fish and falling in love with nature and falling in love. This will sound funny, but a lot of you guys will get it. The patience of just sitting and doing nothing and enjoying being outside. I mean, I wouldn't take that for anything. And I've just carried that now into photography and just, the places that it's taken me. But if you want just like a single experience, I will boil it down to the first time I saw a bear in Teton National Park. Like that was absolutely amazing. It was, oh my gosh, the boar that everyone loves, Bruno. And I don't even have a photo of it because it was such a crazy experience. But watching him cross one of the rivers and then just like stand straight up, and that being your first experience of seeing a bear with essentially no one else around. First of all, I thought that's how it always was in Teton National Park, that you just saw bears everywhere and there was two people. No, I learned that very quickly. But so I hold on to that moment even more, that was my first bear experience, because I won't say I'm obsessed with bears, but I love bears a lot. Wow. And just being able to photograph them and to have that be my first like outdoor experience was pretty incredible. But anytime I don't know. I keep on going to those memories with my dad, because that's really what built up all this for me, was just having those childhood memories. So, yeah.
We get to meet your dad, don't we?
Yep. He's coming Saturday.
This weekend. Awesome.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
He's awesome.
But Maddie, we appreciate you. Thank you for taking the time. The reason I wanted to get you on the show, we kind of talked about it from the first, but I also, your personality is, your personality is contagious. Your drive is contagious. The way you interact with your social media following is very contagious. I really mean that. I mean, the first day I met you, you exuded this confidence and this brightness and this happiness, and so I really feel honored to have you on as a guest, and we appreciate you taking the time to share a lot of your secrets and stuff with us too. So. Where can folks find you if they want to reach out to you and get with you?
Oh, I mean, so I'm very, like I said, I'm active on Ember's account. So it's embark.with.ember. I'm active on there. I have a website page that's the same, www.embarkwithember.com. There's a little spot for contact information if you want to fill that out and send me a message that way. My email is embarkwithember@gmail.com. If you don't want all the information about my dog and not that much about my personal life, my photography page is maddijk.photography on social media. I'm active on both. That's how you can find me.
Awesome.
Yeah. Well, it was great to finally meet you face to face.
Yeah.
Look forward to visiting with you more, and just to echo what Jason said, thank you very much. And I think, your response time, if nothing else, is a good indicator that you take it seriously. And you are there for people, and you're there for the people that follow you. You're there for the people that are asking, looking for information. And I think that says a lot about who you are and what you're doing. And we greatly appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I'm pretty sure the first day I met Jason, I said, I love talking about this stuff. I will talk about it for hours if you let me. So more than happy to.
You did.
We did.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys. It's been a lot of fun talking with you.
Yeah, you too. Have a good night.
Yeah, thank you.
That's a wrap for another episode of Beyond the Wild podcast. We'd like to thank our sponsors, Pictureline.com, your online source for everything photography, and Canon USA. Follow us on Instagram at Beyond the Wild Podcast, and make sure to check out our website at beyondthewildpodcast.com for additional show notes, information, and photographs for all of our episodes. You can watch our podcast on YouTube, where we'll include video and photo content, and subscribe. We welcome your comments, questions, and feedback on all of our social media platforms. We hope that you enjoyed this episode of Beyond the Wild podcast. Until next time, embrace adventure in the great outdoors with a camera in hand.